This right here is the Nintendo Game Boy Advance SP. Time to review it. When you think of the most popular portable devices of the 2000s, you might think above a variety of things like the iPod, portable DVD players, PDAs, MP3 players, electronic LCD games. But one that may also come to mind is the Nintendo Game Boy Advance. Released in 2001, the Game Boy Advance was a huge leap forward compared to its predecessors, the Game Boy and Game Boy Color. With 32-bit graphical capabilities, plus full backwards compatibility with Game Boy and Game Boy Color games, the Game Boy Advance was very aptly named. It's a Game Boy, but Advance. With an impressive 9-year lifespan and some of the best portable games ever made, there's a good reason why the Game Boy Advance sold over 82 million units worldwide. Thanks in no small part to an amazing game library, and also the fact that the Game Boy Advance didn't really have a whole lot of competition. And while yes, there were some handheld game systems that aimed to compete with the Game Boy Advance, like the Nokia N-Gage, Tapwave, and Neo Geo Pocket Color, they never even came close to topping the Game Boy Advance in terms of sales. This thing was a runaway train. Now what you see in front of you is actually the second model of the Game Boy Advance, called the Game Boy Advance SP. It was released around 2003 and featured a new redesign, backlit screen, and a rechargeable battery. And in my opinion, is one of the best Game Boy Advance models to get. Because while I do prefer the form factor of the original Game Boy Advance, considering that was the one that I originally grew up with, that thing eats through AA batteries like crazy, and it does not support a backlit screen unless you mod it. So for the majority of people, this is the model to get. This specific Game Boy Advance SP is currently on loan to me for the purposes of this video. Although I do remember when I was in daycare, I think I was like 6 or 7, I remember one of my friends had a Game Boy Advance SP, and I think they were playing like Donkey Kong Country, and that was literally my only experience with the Game Boy Advance SP. I had an original Game Boy Advance, and I absolutely loved it. I played a ridiculous amount of that thing growing up. Although I do remember playing that thing in the dark was definitely a challenge because, like I mentioned before, the original model did not have a backlit screen. So, let's take a closer look at this thing, shall we? So, on the front of the system, we have a Nintendo logo. Of course, can't have a Nintendo system without the Nintendo logo. One thing you'll notice right off the bat, compared to the original model, the Game Boy Advance SP is a drastic change in terms of design, because, unlike the original model, it folds. That's pretty cool. Another thing you may notice is the design of the Game Boy Advance SP would go on to inspire the design of the Nintendo DS. On the left side of the system, we have a volume gauge to obviously adjust the volume. On the front of the system, we have our cartridge slot, which will accept Game Boy Advance games, as well as, like I said before, Game Boy and Game Boy Color games. On the left side of the system, we have an on-off switch and 2 indicator lights. The first one right here is indicating power, which will glow green when the system's on and red when the battery's low. And then this one is the charging light, which will glow orange when the system is obviously charging. On the back of the system, we have our L and R shoulder buttons, as well as the Game Boy Advance link cable, which is used for daisy chaining multiple Game Boy Advances together for multiplayer, as well as connecting it up to a GameCube, as well as the charging port. The original model of the Game Boy Advance did have a headphone jack, but due to the form factor of the Game Boy Advance SP, it does not have one built in unless you use an adapter that connects to the GBA link cable port. Opening up the system will reveal the LCD screen, which, like I said before, is backlit. We will also find a screen brightness adjustment button, as well as the D-pad, A button, and B button, as well as your start and select. And a little tiny speaker right there. On the bottom of the system, we have our rechargeable battery, Game Boy Advance SP, copyright information, a serial number, as well as a barcode and other information. So what exactly is powering the Game Boy Advance? Well, for starters, it uses a 32-bit ARM 7TDMI processor clocked at 16.78 MHz, as well as an 8 or 4 MHz Z80 coprocessor. For display, it uses a TFT LCD display with a maximum resolution of 240 by 160. For power, it uses a rechargeable lithium-ion battery. Battery life is estimated to be around 10 hours of continuous play with the backlight on, and 18 hours with the backlight off. And it needs at most 3 hours for recharging. For memory, it has 32 kilobytes of RAM, 96 kilobytes of VRAM, and 256 kilobytes of DRAM. For sound, the Game Boy Advance supports dual 8-bit DAC for stereo sound, plus all legacy channels for Game Boy software. And finally, the Game Boy Advance SP weighs approximately 5 ounces, and when the system is closed, it measures in at 3.3 by 3.23 by 0.96 inches. Also, here's an interesting fun fact. Nintendo was originally going to have the Game Boy Advance SP 3D compatible, just like the 3DS, but the resolution of the LCD panel was too low, and it just wasn't really that practical. Now, normally this is where I would show off games that I have for the system, but I haven't owned a Game Boy Advance since I was little, and this system is on loan to me, so unfortunately we will not be showing off any games that I have since I don't have any. But what I can do alternatively, I can list off some games that were either popular when the Game Boy Advance was around or ones that I personally played the most growing up. So just some titles that I would personally recommend is the Super Mario Advance series, the Sonic Advance series, Crash Bandicoot The Huge Adventure, Mario Kart Super Circuit, the Donkey Kong Country series, the Pokemon Game Boy Advance series, the Game Boy Advance versions of Doom 1 and Doom 2, Fire Emblem, Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga, Metroid Fusion, Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland, Wario Land 4. You get it. The Game Boy Advance has a phenomenal game library. Also, since the GBA is 20 years old as of recording this video, game prices have started to go up a little bit, but they're still somewhat in the realm of affordability, except for Pokemon games. Those are always going to be expensive. But I can definitely imagine games for the GBA will become a little more expensive as the years go on. But like I said before, as of recording this video, game prices are relatively okay for now. So even though I did say I no longer own any of my GBA games growing up, I do have a few that are on loan to me along with the system, so at least we can show off some gameplay. So let's do just that. So no surprise, since this is a Nintendo product, the buttons on the GBA are very responsive, no problems whatsoever. I will say though that the L and R shoulder buttons do feel a little on the mushy side. That might just be due to age, but they still respond just fine. The Game Boy Advance SP really benefits from having a backlit screen. Makes it a heck of a lot easier to see what's going on screen. And I should actually correct myself there. Technically, it is a backlit screen, but there were two models of the Game Boy Advance SP. One had a frontlit screen and the other one had a backlit screen. This is the earlier model that actually has a frontlit screen. So, yeah, you're able to see what's on screen, but it does make things look a little washed out. And I'm sure having the model that has a backlit screen would definitely help with that. I think that would look a lot better, but with this one that has a frontlit screen, it still looks fine. Everybody knows that 2D games age a heck of a lot better than 3D ones, and that stands true on the Game Boy Advance. Most games on the GBA were 2D. There were a couple 3D games, but most of them weren't very practical considering the graphical limitations of the GBA. But majority of the titles were in 2D, and they still look phenomenal today. Absolutely beautiful. Especially even better upscaled in a emulator. Even though the Game Boy Advance SP only has one speaker, it still sounds really good and gets decently loud. That's the system all the way up. So honestly, not too bad. I did mention earlier in the video that I originally grew up with the first model of the Game Boy Advance. Personally, I feel like that model is a little more comfortable. Like, yeah, the Game Boy Advance SP is sleeker and it definitely looks nicer, but I think it's just a little too small for me. It feels like it's basically the same design of the DS, but just cut in half. And it just feels a little on the small side, so it tends to cramp my hands after a while. But if you have smaller hands, it could be a perfect fit for you. But do keep in mind that it's definitely not for everybody. And so, that was the Game Boy Advance SP. There's a good reason why the Game Boy Advance SP is considered one of the best models of the GBA. It's got a backlit screen, a rechargeable battery, and it can play all of the same GBA games as a regular Game Boy Advance can, including Game Boy and Game Boy Color games. As of recording this video, prices for the Game Boy Advance SP online are still pretty reasonable, unless of course you're getting special editions. And of course the same thing goes with the original model of the Game Boy Advance. I do still recommend the original model of the GBA if you have the knowledge and expertise to do a LCD swap, as well as a possible rechargeable battery mod. But for the majority of people, the Game Boy Advance SP is the perfect way to go. So that wraps up another review video. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time. And while yes, there were some handheld game systems... Piper! Get out of the shot! What are you doing? And even though all models of the Game Boy Advance... No. Did I just turn to stone? Ah! What the hell? Oh, what? They can have their Game Boy Advance SP back. I don't want it no more. It's haunted.